Does it? Oh, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Well, thank you and welcome to our roundtable discussion on beauty leading to God. And obviously, as a roundtable, it's very much about participation. So it's for everybody here. But just to begin the discussion, three of us, Gabriel, Ulrich, and I will be making some suggestions, some thoughts, some ideas, and we will see where we take it from there. Just one thing about the discussion, in case I forget to say this later, if anybody, because we don't have a direct interpreter this afternoon straight from French into Estonian, that if you're welcome to speak French, but I will translate immediately what you've said, and then it will go from English into Estonian. And I will try to do it as literally as possible, as it has to be translated twice. So thank you very much. So I think that Gabriel is going to begin. Is that right? Thank you.
So can you hear me? Yes, okay, thank you. So my formation background, I'm a philosopher of religion, so I do apologize a little bit that it's all about concepts and their relations, and it's might be difficult to be concrete in many terms, but I hope that I can give you some ideas. So to the topic of beauty and God, whether beauty leads to God, I have formation also in Aquinas and medieval studies. So I will start with the definition on Aquinas on beauty of the formal constituents of beauty. And he says that there are 3 points that concerns beauty in its essence. It's proportion or consonantia and harmony. And then claritas, brightness, splendor or color, and integritas, perfectio is the 3rd one. And so these are what Aquinas calls like objective, ontological, metaphysical, if you like, realities that does not belong to the one who perceives the beauty or the sense effect of a human being. So that is the objective side of the creation, or God as a creator, and the experience, the subjective side, the one who perceives these kind of objective parts or essence of beauty, is on the other side of the receiver. So there is a kind of creator, God, which is objective, and then the one who receives it or grasps it. And here we have the first idea of God as creator, which is the first principle for the natural reason, which is not relying necessarily on the faith or any kind of worldview of religion. But as a human beings, as a part of this created biological world, we can grasp these kind of objective realities. And in that sense, the short answer to the question is that God is not the end, but it's only also the cause that we can perceive something that is beautiful, because God was before us, and it's also the end. So that is kind of natural objective side of the in the thought of Aquinas. But then there is another point that I would like to evoke, is what Aquinas says is the subjective side, that all experience of beauty, there are 2 sides. There is this intellectual or spiritual, if you like, which is when we see something like artistic paintings or hear music. So it's a cognitive part of our human nature. That is quite common. But then the interesting thing I would like to evoke here is that he says that there's an interconnection between goodness and beautiful and aesthetics, which means that there is a moral beauty. So that is kind of personal. The beauty of person can lead us to the charity, which is also the essence of God, what we enter now in the realm of faith, that if we believe that God is love, and if there is a love in the person of people inspired by faith, there is some beauty, and that can somehow lead thoughts or our spiritual prayer inner life to the mystic side of the existence of human being, which is clear in the saints or martyrs. If we take martyrs as an example, they are, because of they want to follow the Christ who was incarnated as the perfection of human nature who has all beauty qualifications as a human and as God, supernatural faith and love. So in martyrs, as far as they incarnate this both human beauty and divine beauty, they can give us thoughts or testify on their past divine realities of God. So in that sense, there is a possibility to think that beauty in saints leads God and the Christian faith. And maybe the last thing I would like to say as a start is that what Aquinas says, that in that hierarchy of beauty in values, if we compare this kind of created world, artists that are working on this world and the material basis, they cannot be creator in the proper sense. They can only manipulate the existent material things and reorganize in buildings, arts, etc. But the hierarchy, the highest value is the spiritual value, which is clear that when we has a human experience, if we compare a statue like David's statue in Firenze of Michelangelo and disfigured human being, an ugly person, sick person, we still might find, if we are human beings totally, that this disfigured human sick people is somehow more beautiful because we grasp the soul, the animation of life that has a higher value and beauty because it is the gift of God, of life, that even if there's a perfection in material world, this proportional thing, then there is this spiritual beauty that goes beyond this material world. And in that experience, we can find something kind of religious beauty that is also true. And if I may conclude this with this Emmanuel Levinas that I think speaks about this human face and figure, that when we realize in another foreigner the universality, that in every human face there is some mystical presence of the one who created all human beings. We have this understanding of compassion and towards non-violence of people, and that is one kind of religious kind of beauty when we realize that there is this creator who is the beginning and the end of the religious worldview. Thank you.
I should have said, of course, because I'm assuming we all know each other by now, but because Gabriel is new to us today, oh, thank you. He's based at the Dominican Studium in Helsinki, just across the water. Did you want to say anything about sort of art in the context of your work there, Gabriel? Sort of incarnating it a little bit.
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, I hesitated to raise this idea. Well, I'm interested in this question of beauty, and I'm very pleased that I was asked to talk about it because we have this cultural center in Helsinki, and which is well known here, of course, that we are also between the East and West, and we have this cultural center that tries to incarnate this aesthetics and beauty in the sense that our very small and limited lecture and concert hall has this musical beauty of 19th century and aesthetics from Russia and from Sweden. And so we try to get the people together to have this experience of social gatherings through the beauty and the human encounter. And so I'm working there as a director. Thank you.
Sorry, always terrible with microphones. I don't like tech, that's the reality. Sorry about that. Thank you, Alain. So Ulrich is a philosopher based in Berlin and Münster, is that right, Ulrich? And specializes in theology and aesthetics. So would you like to reflect a bit for us on the question of beauty leading to God in the light of your specialization, Ulrich?
Yeah, thank you very much for invitation. I'm a philosopher, I'm a theologian, and I'm thinking about this relationship between aesthetics and theology. I'm thinking in a horizon of the 20th and 21st century. and especially I was formated in political theology by Johann Baptist Metz. And this is a theology, perhaps a very special theology in Germany we have, which is looking for the terror and the war of Second World War and Nazism. And this is a background. We are looking for the question. And this is a background too for me to look there for the question of beauty and does beauty lead to God? And in my thought, it's not so easy to say yes, it do. Beauty is leading to God. I have looked for some words of the popes, and in '69 I found in a lecture addressed to artists of Paul VI a very clear answer. The world is which we in the world in which we live needs beauty. We need it. And Benedict XVI, he addresses in a meeting to artists in 2009, beauty, both that of the cosmos and of the nature, and that expressed through works of art can become a path to the transcendent, to the ultimate mystery, to God. So on the answer there is very clear, but on the other hand, I want to go back to Augustine. And Augustine feared in earthly beauty as a trap that can keep man away from God. Exactly the other way. So on the question, does beauty lead to God? It's not so clear. You can mention Friedrich Nietzsche, and others. So on. At the end, there are some skeptical people and addresses, and there are some positive addresses. For me, I'm searching in my theological work for a way to do a thinking between this both, between the answer that is very clear, oh yes, beauty leads us to God, or between, on the other hand, an answer, it doesn't. So on, my theological question begins in the cross. In the cross, we can find all the experiences of men and women, of war, of death, of illness, of terrorism. You can add a lot. And the beauty of the risen Christ only is possible through the cross. So on the way to the beauty, I think the way to the beauty is for many people in our world, in our so-called reality, I think it's only going through the cross, through these experiences of illness and death. And my proposal to deal with this in arts is, for me, I'm not an artist. I'm someone who is looking for artworks or hearing to look for the traces you can find in an artwork, traces of the cross, of the experiences of people of illness, death, and war. I have this today. I have looked a little bit for the pictures of Björn. And you know the pictures, they are showed here in the exhibition in the church. And I think you can see inside this works some traces of deepness and some traces of the experiences of chaos, but you can see also some traces of experiences of a life which is risen out of this chaos. You can see it in some very small traces of white color. You have to look there. In all the 5 artworks of Björn, you can see this very, very small white color traces. And for me, you can see in these color traces, these white color traces, something of this way through the cross, through the chaos, to life. Okay, that's for the first. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. In a way, I feel that Gabriel and Ulrich have done my work for me, in that Gabriel has reminded us of the priority of God, and Ulrich has reminded us of the cross and its place in the revelation of beauty. Because we do have a problem with beauty. I mean, just as much as beauty can distract us from God, beauty we might call decadent, to paraphrase Aquinas, looking for something good in the wrong place. Also, it is quite clear that a lot of beauty at a more basic level doesn't lead to God. I mean, people can go to a concert of Handel's Messiah or Bach's B minor Mass. Do they all come out wanting to be baptized? Or do they just have a lovely aesthetic experience? Now, it's not for me to judge what is going on in people's hearts, but it doesn't lead to immediate conversion. Furthermore, is art really about beauty? A lot of contemporary art is ugly, it's shocking, and it doesn't aspire to be beautiful. It, on the other hand, and this is why I want to take us a bit, is I think that it is revelatory. But what I will argue is that Christian revelation goes deeper. A very moving work of art I saw a few years ago at the Berlin Biennale with Ulrich and other brothers from the Institut Chenu in Berlin was a work called Noch einmal, Again, by Mario Pfeiffer. And it was a film that he made where he did a retrial because an asylum seeker in Germany had died in care. He was mentally ill. He was given care, sort of, but it turned out that one of his carers was an extremist, and that also he had been taken by vigilantes after getting into a violent argument with somebody in a shop. The vigilantes were tried, the carer was tried, the case was dismissed by the judge very quickly after just a few days. And Pfeiffer decided to redo it with a jury and make a film, and showed some of the film footage, for example, from the shop. I haven't stopped thinking about that. And it was not comfortable, it was not beautiful, but it did make us ask very hard questions. So it's not beauty, let's make everything pretty, escapism. Now, I'm also, I'm a theologian of the arts. I'm also a composer and a poet. I work a lot with dancers as well, and I organize art events. One of our sisters in Cambridge, we're organizing an exhibition at the moment. I went once to see some art when I lived in Newcastle in the north of England, which is a little bit of a sort of baby Berlin, really. And I came out of this exhibition, this word that came to me: the work of Christian artists is to show to others what they have seen and heard in heaven. So the work of Christian artists is to show to others what they have seen and heard in heaven. It's on the Feast of the Archangels. It's one of my favorite feasts. So by that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's beautiful. Could, I think, mean two things. So going to the Bible to try to understand what came to me. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, St. Paul talks about somebody, maybe himself, who was taken up to the third heaven and heard things that cannot and are not allowed to be spoken, translating the Greek literally. So this person heard things which are unable to be and may not be spoken. Well, art takes us beyond words, doesn't it? That's why we like it. That's why we need it. The limit of words. We can say lots of things, but that's because each word on its own is inadequate. As Catherine Pickstock says, the words gesture towards reality. So there was that. And the heavens in Jewish apocalyptic are not like, the heaven is not just up there or out there or some sort of parallel universe. The heavens are the depths of now. When we celebrate the Eucharist, the divine liturgy, we are in the presence of the angels and the saints and all those who have gone before us. We just can't see them yet, not yet. And much of our art in the liturgy is about making visible the invisible, like pictures of saints and angels and so on. The beautiful glass we have in the church here. Kai's very moving work. We had a lovely conversation about that yesterday. But when St. John saw into the heavens, possibly during the liturgy, because there's a lot of liturgy going on in the book of Revelation, he doesn't see just beauty, he sees conflict, he sees war, he sees injustice, just like in Mario Pfeiffer's work. He sees environmental destruction, he sees plague, as we are living through at the moment. And yet, he also sees triumph. There is the triumph of the cross. He sees into the tabernacle, he sees the woman, image of the church, of the Holy Mother of God, who is glorified and in labor. Both are happening at once. You can't have one without the other. So I suggest that we should have confidence. A lot of contemporary art is very powerful, but much of it is so dark. It holds a mirror up to the worst of society. And artists tend to be very sensitive people and often absorb absolutely the worst and the unconscious of others and all that. So if a lot of contemporary art is very grim, don't just blame the artists. I worry, though, about a kind of flip side of mysticism, which is contemporary artists who simultaneously reject religion and reject God, but are fascinated by esotericism and magic. Sort of dark mysticism. But in Revelation, it is not trying to go up. It is being taken up, like all the visionaries. And it doesn't mean that we have a sort of mystical experience where we are no longer aware of where we are. It is simply that God gives something to us. It might happen at every moment. It might be looking at one of the paintings here, or just a conversation we have, or the light in nature or through the windows. So, and I suggest that we are given grace, which does not destroy our faculties. Grace perfects nature. It takes it up. So I think we can be confident in that beauty, which comes out of the conflict, the agony, and ultimately the triumph of the cross in the resurrection. Thank you.
Can I add only one sentence? You have told us about Gabriel, about goodness and beauty, and I think this example you have given of Pfeiffer, and who shows the injustice. I think there you can find this, because he's not only showing injustice, he is doing it because he has an idea of justice to overcome this injustice, this real injustice in our society. He tried to overcome it with his artwork to show there is another way out than this way we have in this experience. And so on, I think there is on a negative side, or on another side, in a second level, something like this, there's the relationship between goodness, justice, he wants to show via injustice, and beauty, so on. I think this is there is a possibility to connect this concept of Thomas Aquinas in a modern way to this experience and this artwork of this concrete artist in Berlin in last year or 2 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you, Ulrich. Yeah. À vous maintenant, as they say. Over to you now. Any thoughts or questions or commentaries, comments? Des pensées, des questions, des commentaires? Paul, Dominic.
Thank you. I don't have a question per se, but a remark to begin with, inspired by the title of this roundtable, Does Beauty Lead to God? And the first counterexample that came to mind was the novel of Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray, where his self-beauty so led him to so some satanic pact, if you will, but it was a novel about the preservation of beauty, shall we say, but then the ugliness was not magicked away by this permanent youth that Dorian Gray bargained for. And so there's something there about, I think, in the novel about having that human destiny and human nature needs to embrace its own ugliness if it's going to come to beauty, and eventually perhaps at least, if not go to God, at least go away from what is not God.
I think you are right, and my question is how is the connection between this both experiences, the ugliness and the overcoming of this, and the self picture as a beauty. In art, we can see such one answer of this question for in Fra Angelico. If we are looking for his picture Noli Me Tangere, he is showing the this scene at the grave. Mary of Magdala, he's searching Jesus, and there's a gardener, so-called gardener, and so on. In this painting, if you are looking for in an exact way, there you can see the wounds of Jesus. Jesus, he is resurrected, and you can see him with the wounds, like in the Bible. And you can see a meadow with flowers, and the red flowers and the red wounds are done in the same way, in a material, technical way, in the same way. And for me, this is the idea of Fra Angelico, to say, okay, the wounds, they are the way to the beauty of the flowers. And in the beauty of the flowers, you can see the experiences of the wounds of mankind. And so on, it's coming together, because Fra Angelico has done in artistically way this wounds and flowers exactly in the same way. It's the same, but there's shown us a difference, wounds and flowers. This perhaps it's a little bit this relationship, and it's a relationship from the one to the other, and from the other to the one, so on. And at the end, this is after our time, we can see the whole beauty, but now we are in this.
Just a short comment that I really like this explanation, in the sense that also in Aquinas, he makes a reflection in triune God. So there is this mystical side of the Father, who is uncreated principle. So we cannot know the whole mystery of God, and the Christ, we can, because he was incarnated, he can restore to perfection exactly what was lost. This evil is transformed to the glory in charity that we can see in the resurrection, because of this beauty and goodness. The goodness as a final end needs that this bad will be overcome in resurrection. So that was beautifully said.
Any other thoughts or comments, or do we need a bit of apophatic silence? Frère Jean.
Merci. Donc, je veux parler en français. Ah, d'accord. Il est vrai que dans le monde de l'art et dans le monde de la prédication, parfois, il y a plusieurs facteurs qui peuvent s'entrecroiser.
It's true that in the world of art and also in the world of preaching, there are several factors which, as it were, cross, sort of interconnect.
Et parfois même faire interférence.
And which sometimes can also contradict, they can conflict with each other.
Je me réfère, je ne sais pas, cette réflexion vient aussi parce que j'étais aumônier des artistes diocésains à Bordeaux.
Frère Jean wants to make this reflection because he was actually chaplain to the artists in the diocese of Bordeaux in France.
Et donc, il est vrai qu'en tant que frère religieux dominicain qui est là parmi les artistes, j'étais en particulier avec les chanteurs, disons, j'avais une sorte de mission qui était plutôt l'accompagnement.
So as a Dominican friar among artists, particularly singers, he had a sort of a mission of accompaniment.
Et la question que je me posais, c'est que parfois pour un dominicain, pour un frère ou une sœur artiste, il peut avoir différentes manières de percevoir le beau, c'est-à-dire il y a aussi une sorte de virginité devant le beau, et après comment est-ce que je veux dire le beau et je veux dire le Christ.
So as a Dominican sort of reflecting on art, there can be a certain virginity in the face of beauty. And how does one speak beauty? How does one speak Christ?
Parce que parfois, donc, la perception esthétique qu'un artiste peut ressentir, c'est-à-dire dans cette perception si simple, il peut avoir aussi la tentation de la manipulation pour utiliser la beauté afin d'introduire donc un message et un prédicatif.
In the experience, the perception of beauty, there can be a temptation to manipulate what one has seen in order to introduce a certain message, to say something essentially that we want the art to say, but if I understand, may not necessarily be there.
Et donc la question, c'est que justement, il peut y avoir une interférence entre ce que je vois, et même dans une certaine cruauté, comme toi-même l'expliquais, et la manière de la dire ou de vouloir même transfigurer ce que je vois en introduisant une idée du Christ que je peux avoir.
So there can be a conflict between what we actually see, very crudely, and actually then what we say about it, and an idea about Christ that we want to insert into the experience perception of the art.
Et donc, c'est ce que l'on peut voir parfois dans des artistes chrétiens, que lorsqu'ils font une œuvre païenne, ils sont beaucoup mieux qu'en voulant être un artiste chrétien qui va, entre guillemets, contaminer le message.
It's sometimes the case that a Christian artist, that is, artists who are Christian, can create a pagan work much more effectively, much more convincingly than a Christian work in which they want to insert a Christian message.
Surtout par rapport à l'art figuratif, hein, je pense. Donc, vous voyez, ce que je veux dire, c'est seulement un petit élément de réflexion. Donc, je ne sais même pas si c'est une question. Mais en tout cas, c'est quelque chose qu'on peut ressentir dans des artistes qui voient, qui expérimentent quelque chose, et après, la manière de pouvoir le dire de manière chrétienne.
So, and he's saying this case is often found in figurative art, but then just to sum up, and it's maybe more a comment than a question, there is this problem of a conflict between what one sees and then what one wants to say about it, especially in a Christian way, a Christian context.
Parce qu'une chose, c'est de quelle manière un artiste peut recevoir cette réalité en face et voir au-delà de cette réalité pour la faire beauté, et la manière dans laquelle il peut dire le Christ. Et il peut exprimer et traduire cette beauté.
So there is what the artist sees, and beyond that, what he sees of Christ and how to translate that beauty.
Parce qu'il y a aussi la question de la grâce, hein. Donc, de quelle manière l'artiste peut avoir donc cette lumière un peu naturelle, et tout le monde n'est pas un frangélico, qui a aussi cette grâce qui en définitive s'appelle, je pense, la sainteté.
Because there's also the question of grace. I mean, there can be that natural light. I mean, we're not all Fra Angelico, but there's also that grace which one finds, and indeed, which we call holiness. Merci. Thank you very much.
Jean, I want to add only one sentence. I think the problem is when the pagan artist or the Christian artist is working in a way that there is nothing open in his work. I think this is the idea of a Christian art, to say God is greater than all my thinking about God. God is greater than all my artist working. So on, there is an openness for more in my work. I'm not making a definition of something. This is a value, or the theological sentence about God. And I think this is the same for a pagan artist. Perhaps you can say it's a transcendent dimension in art. It's going out of the material work, which is a basic. It's going out of a definition of something you show in an artwork, in a picture or photo. It's going out of, and so on, this openness. I think this is one we need in pagan arts, and we need in Christian arts. We need in all arts.
Really glad Ulrich opened that question of openness. I mean, you've really got us going there, Jean. Thank you. Again, at the Berlin Biennale, one thing which shocked me a bit was art which rejected transcendence. And I thought that was almost like the mirror image of the Christian artist who tries to be so Christian that he or she closes something. That the art which rejected transcendence was actually putting an atheist agenda onto the art, and it reduced the art. It was almost like the artist was saying, you're not allowed to have this experience of my art. But also the point that Jean and Ulrich have just made me think of the work of Maurice Denis and the battle of philosophers like Jacques-Henri Samaritain for sacred art. Maurice Denis is one of the most well-known French Catholic artists of the late 19th and early 20th century. And he was very much considered right and proper. He was by nature very conservative, very committed Catholic. His Annunciation at Fiesole, which is inspired by Fra Angelico, is a very pretty work. It's full of light. The Virgin Mary looks like a nice French Catholic convent girl, middle class from Paris, you know, very nice indeed. And then I saw another of his works, which absolutely shocked me. And it was a pagan work, the Games of Galatea. It's basically lots of naked women running around on the beach. The shocking thing is it's so much more alive than the Annunciation. And again, something that really struck me is the gaze of one of the women who is looking at the viewer and saying, go on, be honest with yourself. You know why you're looking at this picture. It was very perturbing, but it was so much more alive. It's like Marie-Alain Couturier, who complained that Christian art was dead, but pagan art was alive. It had a terrible life to it. Well, where is the resurrection? As Nietzsche said, I'm not against Christians. I just wish they were a bit more risen. Jacques Maritain, of course, we often do read Jean-Luc Barré's wonderful biography of the Maritain couple, because Jacques Maritain was, of course, married to the poet Raisa Romantsova, a Jewish Catholic, who was very, very much the source of his ideas, but because she had poor health, wasn't able to have such a public presence. But Maritain famously said, if you want to be a Christian artist, don't try to sort of stick the Christianity onto the art or insert the message, as Fréjean said. Be a Christian and be a good artist. Because as we've seen in the case of Maurice Denis, art always tells the truth. Art always tells the truth. That is about the artist, and it can be very shocking. If I were Maurice Denis' spiritual director, I would be giving him a very hard time about what was really going on inside him, what needed to be healing. Sorry. Your microphones are better than we have in England. Okay. Slowly. Sorry. I will be worried about the state of Denis' soul. So when Maritain says, be a Christian, that is the enormous demand on a Christian artist. I think it does actually require holiness. And that is only possible by grace and by conversion, by metanoia. Thank you.
There is one question from the internet, from brother Vivian Boland in San Clemente in Rome. If for Aquinas, beauty is not a theme in its own right, but becomes along with truth and goodness, is there a Dominican thinker, writer, who focuses more directly on beauty as a way of God? Does that make sense? So if for Aquinas, beauty is not a theme in its own right, but comes along with truth and goodness, is there a Dominican thinker, writer, who focuses more directly on beauty as a way to God?
Well, the only comment I can make on this, what I have, I'm not a specialist in beauty and on Aquinas. It is true that Aquinas does not have this treatise on beauty itself. Whether the question is whether it's essential in Aquinas is debated, as if it's a transcendental or belongs to the essence of God. So that is debated in the academic sense. But unfortunately, I cannot answer the question if there is a Dominican writer that has treated this question.
You could try The Art of God Incarnate by Aiden Nichols. It's his first book. Very beautiful, very readable, and very much focuses on theology of the icon. I think the way, especially that the icon sort of reverses a perspective. So it's not that we look into the picture, but actually the icon comes into our world as the word of God became flesh and dwelt among us. But it is that capacity of art to disturb and interrupt. I mean, it might be that we have an experience which we intuitively know as beautiful, and then later we reflect with words on what it is about this that is beautiful, why it's beautiful. But I think that's certainly the first book I would think of. Is Aiden Nichols, The Art of God Incarnate.
There is this famous sentence and title of a book, La beauté sauvera le monde, which Michael Lonsdale denied and said, no, it's not the beauty which will save the world, but it's love which will save the world. Could you comment on this? And also, what is then place of art in church life today? How do you conceive the place and the role which arts, whatever expression that may be, could play in today's church life?
I try to say a little bit in my thought, to think about beauty in relationship to experiences of cross. I think there is a way to understand beauty in this going through this way, through the cross, through the experiences of cross in all forms, as love, because the overcoming of death in our faith is a consequence of love of God to Jesus Christ, to mankind, and so on. This is the first. The second, I can say, okay, the role of arts in today's church life. I think we need something like a ecumenical vision. Ecumenical vision is not only a vision, it's not a vision of ecumene between Christians of the one denomination and the other. It's a ecumenical coming together between artists. They are believe in God, and artists that don't believe in God, because of this openness I have talked about. Because in this openness, if we find this openness in these artworks, openness for something other, someone others, for God, for transcendent, you can give a lot of words for this openness, or the goal of this openness. Then we can go together. My experience, I'm working sometimes with artists. They are not Christians, they are not believers, but we come together in this question of mankind. What is the future? What is love? What is beauty? What is justice? All the values you can find behind their work as a background of their working as artists, and so on. I think we need in church this ecumenical openness to work together, because we all are searching for the truth and the beauty of God. We are on the way, and they can also, the non-Christian artists, they can help us to go some steps ahead, like Pfeiffer. I think this is a good example you have given. So on, this is my first answer.
Maybe I could give an example from a friend of mine on the beauty and love question. My friend Alice, who is a full-time artist and a very committed Catholic. And she often goes on retreat. And she went on a retreat and was told, it's not all about beauty. You know, the really important thing is like Mother Teresa. It's like looking after people who are sick. It's cleaning the toilet. And she said, I don't know what to do with that. And I said, we talked about it. And then I thought about her art. A lot of her work is still life. It's portraiture in watercolor. It's very good. What strikes me, though, about it is the tenderness of the gaze. Alice's work has a loving gaze. It is not a gaze that judges or condemns or is cynical or is despairing, but it is loving gaze. And I'm seeing so much of that in the work here. There is a goodness and gentleness and respect of the other. And so I said to her, I think we reflected a bit on that, and I reflected back to her about her art. And I said, maybe we need something which lifts us up to give us that strength to love, that grace to love. We cannot just spend all our time doing, or we will be exhausted. We need something to lift us up. So I wonder if that is a bit the beauty and love relationship.
La discussion que nous avons me fait penser encore à l'actualité du message du frère Marie-Alain Couturier.
The discussions we're having make me think about the ideas and the engagement of Marie-Alain Couturier, French Dominican.
À la fois parce que il fait travail de théoricien par toute sa vie, d'une certaine manière, par cet engagement artistique qu'il a lui-même comme peintre, sans être peut-être excellent, mais comme bon peintre.
First, because he was a painter himself, and he really developed his skills as a painter, even if he wasn't the best and most spectacular painter.
Mais aussi parce qu'il va justement, et c'est là où ça rejoint cette question dont vous parliez, frère, d'œcuménisme contemporain, déjà dans les années 50, il va chercher ces artistes non chrétiens.
But also because from the 50s onwards, Marie-Alain Couturier goes out to, in this ecumenical engagement, which we've just talked about, he's going to go to the artists, the non-believers, to seek collaborations with them.
Alors j'ai en tête le couvent de la Tourette, puisque j'y vis.
So I'm thinking of the priory of La Courette where I live.
Construit par Le Corbusier.
Built by Le Corbusier.
Et il avait cette phrase que je trouve encore extrêmement actuelle. J'ai toujours pensé que pour faire un bel art chrétien, il faudrait des artistes qui soient en même temps des saints.
I've always thought that to have a good Christian art, you need to have good art. You need artists who make artists who are also saints.
Mais comme c'est très difficile à trouver,
but as it's very difficult to find,
je préfère faire appel à des génies sans la foi plutôt qu'à des croyants sans talent.
So I prefer to call on genius people, very bright people without faith, than faithful without skills.
Et ça reste très actuel, et cette pensée du père Couturier, je termine comme ça, et on la retrouve dans un livre qui parle de lui, mais aussi de son travail, et dont le titre, à mon avis, rejoint cette question à la fois d'amour et de beauté que nous évoquons actuellement.
There is a book which was published about him, and which the title of which evokes this debate between beauty and love.
Et son titre que je trouve extrêmement inspirant pour penser l'art aujourd'hui est La vérité blessée.
And the title of this book is Hurt Truth, the truth which is hurt.
Je pense que ça peut encore être motivant pour nous à travers ce titre de vérité qui rejoint directement et peut-être nous directement comme ordre prêcheur et cette question de la vérité blessée qui nous ramène à la croix de manière extrêmement directe, la question de la transcendance, puisqu'on sent bien que c'est parce que cette vérité est blessée qu'elle nous rejoint au titre de l'amour.
This brings us back for us, especially as Dominicans, to the question of how this hurt truth, especially through the cross, can come and bring us to love.
Ce livre, pour finir, raconte aussi la manière dont Couturier part en fait aux États-Unis avec la guerre, et en fait c'est ce moment-là aussi qui va être fondateur dans ce travail.
This book also tells the story how Couturier goes to the United States during the war, and at this crucial point in his life starts this development and this thinking between contemporary artists and the church.
So obviously, thank you very much, Charles. It does, I think, of course, mean where we do find artists who have talent and are believing that they do deserve our special care and accompaniment because they are a great gift of God to the church.
And this is a task of the whole order of our Dominican order, to give the artists in our communities enough space and time and something like this for working, for doing something, because this is, for me, it's very, very important. This is a form of preaching.
A last question maybe from Argentina, from Sister Valeria Nuguez. She writes, being a Christian is a way of living and understanding the world in connection with God. So when art expresses something, this link becomes an ontological question, or does it rather evoke the language with which we express the experience that transcends us and that we try to share? Does that make sense as a question? Do you understand what she means?
If I've understood correctly, is she saying if a Christian artist creates work, is it actually a deeper insight into how things really are, which is enabled by their Christian faith? Or is it rather more simply Christian eyes on the world? Is that seeing the world through Christian glasses? It's maybe going back to Frère Jean's question, I don't know.
Maybe this question needs a bit of clarification. And
could you just read it again, please?
I think the text is a translation, I think. So being a Christian is a way of living and understanding the world in connection with God. When art expresses this link, is it an ontological question, or rather a language with which we express the experience that transcends us and that we try to share?
Okay. Well, as I'm holding the microphone, maybe both. I think I'm fascinated, going back to the Book of Revelation and the tradition of Jewish apocalyptic to which it belongs. It's a seeing deeper into reality, a deeper into now. also there is the apophatic dimension of struggling to express some experience of God. I think of Teilhard de Chardin, actually, who works so much on finding God in the world and the world in God. And maybe it is the thing of the mystic who can only speak indirectly, who can only speak in images, and then who cannot do the work for us, but maybe only can offer resources and maybe even provoke a bit of a reaction.
I think it's a question of the lightening of our life, of the life of people, and it's a form to deal with this. In the pastoral constitution of the Second Vatican Council in Gaudium et Spes, we can read about the light of the gospel for looking for the signs of the time. But in Gaudium et Spes 46, we can read also about the light of the experiences of people, which helps us to understand the signs of the time. And I think artists are working, as a Christian artists are working in this relationship between the lightening of the gospel, the lightening of God on the one hand, and the lightening of the experiences, and not only the good experience, the beauty experience, the pretty experience, but all experiences of the people. And for that, it's one way to deal with this relationship, for understanding the times of the signs of the time, because in these times, signs of the times, we can find some traces of Jesus Christ in our world within.
Thank you all very much for the richness of this discussion, and both those here and those elsewhere. Thank you, those who joined us online. Thank you to the interpreters. And we're now taking a break, and I think we're gathering again at 5, aren't we, for poetry? So we look forward to that. Thank you very much.